Welcome to the VID Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Y. Lapointe. This show focuses on the international business of television and film distribution, including co-productions, formats, and new media content. Proudly based in the Greater Vancouver area, also known as Hollywood North, we're about to learn how people in our industry are expanding their footprint and finding the right partners around the world. Let's get things started and learn from each other and the experts within our field. This podcast was created by NNow Global and is available as an audio format on Apple, Spotify, and Android application. Welcome to episode 3 of the VID Podcast. Today I'm joined by Patrick Zuchowicki from DISCOP. DISCOP is another great, amazing international television conference and marketplace company, but mainly focused on Africa. And today we're going to be talking about not only about virtual markets, because I do feel like we've talked a lot about that in episode 1 and 2. So we're going to take also in this conversation, we're going to take a bit of a step back and take a look at the African marketplace in general to give us a little bit of context so that we can better understand why Patrick made the decisions that he did with how he would approach his market moving forward, not only in 2020, but also his vision for 2021, which is really interesting and what we'll be talking about towards the end of this podcast recording. So welcome, Patrick. Thanks for joining me here this morning.
Thank you for having me on your program, Eric. Thank you very much.
So tell me a little bit more about DISCOP and yourself and what drives you every morning during this pandemic to keep going and keep marching on.
We've been in this kind of business for 30 years, and it has not been an easy ride. We were, as everybody else, confronted by this crisis, which has literally changed the way we will be doing B2B business in the future. We spoke to about 100 operators, broadcasters, pay TV platforms, telcos, streaming platforms, to understand what will be their future and see how we could help business to continue to grow under those new conditions, and the new conditions being that it's impossible to consider traveling to Africa for the time being, and within Africa, which for us is even more important than flying into Africa. And our added value has always been, not just in the last few years, but has always been to plan, organize meetings between buyers, co-production influencers, and the vendors. When we began DISCOP, we began with the ex-Soviet republics. These were unknown territories, and for a market to happen, we had to actually identify new buyers and bring them together and set up these meetings. So we've been doing this. We've been in Africa now for almost 15 years, and we've adopted the same strategy all along, because our vendors, whether they are from Africa or from outside of Africa, do not have the manpower to really monitor the changes that happen in these 54 countries, and changes do not happen at the same pace. So we've always been trying to organize meetings, and now the question for us was to see if we were able to organize virtual meetings and to see how these meetings could be as efficient, and if not more efficient, than in-person meetings organized during markets. So in a few words, what we decided to do, we decided there are now 2 types of B2B networking setups for us. One is virtual meetings, and that's why we decided to now set up 2 virtual markets a year, one in the springtime and the other one in the fall time, where we deliver specific services leading to virtual meetings, but informed, better prepared meetings. And the other aspect of our business is the in-person meeting. So how is that going to play out in the future? We don't know. Nobody knows. We don't know whether you're going to be allowed to have 500, 1,000, 3,000 people under the same roof. But what's important to consider is not necessarily what the rules and guidelines of trade shows will tell us. It's what our industry is going to tell us when it comes to in-person meetings. What will they need? And I can assure you that, and not just because of the COVID situation, but over the last year, our industry, the entertainment and media industry, the content export industry, has changed dramatically as far as their export strategy is concerned. So this is an even more important factor, I would say, at this point, despite the difficulties of this pandemic, to consider and to see if yes or no, our people will get used to virtual meetings, virtual encounters, or they will stick to in-person meetings.
I think this is an amazing introduction to the entire conversation we'll be having today. So let's start first looking at the African continent first, because this is likely new territory for a lot of the people who will be listening here, because the majority of the audience I'll probably bring here is from either North America or Europe. So what made DISCOP decide 15 years ago to shift the focus on Africa specifically, and first with the English language countries, with your market in Johannesburg, and then a few years ago opening up that second one with the French language territories, with Abidjan in Côte d'Ivoire, or Ivory Coast? I
would say that one big reason is because we felt that there was that we could provide the same kind of services that we were providing our clients in Central and Eastern Europe. We could provide that service in Africa. So when we began DISCOP 30 years ago, there wasn't any internet, no mobile. So the only way to identify TV stations in a world that has been under communism for 70 years was to really travel there, meet there. So we had a field office all over the place. We traveled a lot, and we were the eyes and the ears of our clients, bringing one by one buyers who were not even called buyers, individuals, entrepreneurs who were running a TV station, trying to work it out and understand how the model could work. And so phase of this, the beginning of this industry, we loved that. It was very exciting and obviously very interesting, because we saw all of these countries grow fast and become members of the global entertainment and media community. Today, Central and Eastern Europe is a major territory, major place. So 15 years ago, when things started to really mature, we had the opportunity to sell our market in Budapest to the NATPE organization. We felt that it was for us the right time to switch from being what we were to trying our expertise into a new continent that represents 25% of the countries that are listed at the United Nations. So it's a massive, big continent, and we decided to raise to that challenge.
So you basically applied your own, the same model that you were doing in Eastern Europe. You applied it to Africa in order to bring people together. And when I first went to DISCOP 5 years ago, it was known as the last continent in the world where television still was growing, or the only last emerging market in the world. Is that still true? Do you still see a trend upward with African television and digital content?
More than ever, I think that is indeed. I think that there are numbers that speak for themselves. Africa is indeed 54 countries and 49 sub-Saharan countries, with three main languages, actually four, I'm sorry, English, French, Swahili, and Portuguese. Most countries are not developing at the same speed. You have a few big countries, big markets that represent maybe 70% of all the business there. But what is interesting is to put things in perspective. The B2B content trade is around $22 billion a year. Africa, based on our estimation, represents trade into Africa and within Africa represents about 1.2 billion. Again, it's an estimate because they aren't, but we are pretty good at getting those estimates together. Now, out of that 1.2 billion, there is today the value of content produced in Africa that's being exported out of the original country of production is about 125 to 150 million dollars, roughly. That represents a very, very tiny amount of money for content produced in a region where you today have huge creativity, huge potential, and the desire to watch homegrown content, local content. The real potential, we believe, is within Africa, the intra-African trade, content produced in Africa being sold to other countries in Africa, and obviously being exported outside of Africa. What we saw 15 years ago, most of the content that was being sold into Africa was content produced outside of Africa, and it is still the case. And it's most of the content that you watch on TV in Africa is produced outside of Africa. But in the last few years, you've seen a big growth in terms of homegrown content, and the current COVID crisis is also forcing local content producers and local broadcasters to come up with content produced locally that replaces a lot of things, a lot of productions that will not be available, whether it's live sports, live events, new productions. So this pandemic has given an additional impetus to create more content produced in Africa. So we have set ourselves up to first and before all being able to facilitate this intra-African trade. And we see that, as you mentioned it earlier, we have two markets, and we see more collaboration between Francophone, Anglophone, Lusophone Africa, even co-productions of original content. So this, for us, is the growth. And in that growth, yes, definitely there are major outside companies from outside of Africa that can play a role, either in terms of co-production, and there's also where we help them.
It was already shifting towards that way that you described, where really the business is about the business in Africa. But I definitely saw that. I was on one of your panels in 2015, and I remember kind of having an aha moment on stage, realizing because there was kind of this perception that, we're kind of tired of Westerners coming in and liquidating their content at very cheap prices, which makes it difficult for us as local producers to do made in Africa content. And I kind of realized on stage, like, if producers want to do business in Africa, they will have to think differently than simply selling the content they already have. But finding ways of doing co-productions and collaborating with Africans for new content or new formats that are basically remade for the African marketplace.
This is the way we are our market. When we highlight our clients' offerings, we try to be as simple as possible, and our classification is very simple. There is finished content, obviously content that's available for delivery, and then adaptation rights for scripted and unscripted show with proven track record, and that's a very big section that grows a lot. And projects in later stage of development, original projects initiated by producers from Africa who today have the ability, the creativity to come up with original content, especially in the animation sector, for instance, but also in the TV series sector. And we are really helping broadcasters become co-producers rather than renters of existing content. So you see more broadcasters with the very small amount of money that they have, preferring to invest that money into original content for which they will retain a little bit of IP, rather than going after deals where they can rent a lot of content, but it's like throwing the money out of the window. Then it's no longer going to be their own. So back in 2015, it was beginning, but today this is, and again, because of the pandemic, this is really happening. We see that happening.
So now there's going to be, actually on the flip side, there's going to be an opportunity to start exporting more content outside of Africa. So that might be one of the opportunities for Westerners to take note of and see, how could that, because with immigration all over the world, there's an audience everywhere for everything.
It is, but it's. I think that where we see we're going to be during the our DISCOP Africa virtual market. We have a very few virtual sessions. One of them is going to be called America, and we're going to have talent agents from the United States expressing their objectives in terms of representing talent from Africa, representing projects that could bring together producers from Africa, producers from Europe, producers from the States. Projects obviously with global appeal. We've come across a few projects initiated by major TV or film production companies. There are subjects that will put Africa at the center of many new TV shows, new films that will involve producers from the United States, from Europe, from all over the world, and producers from some countries in Africa for the time being. But this is really a trend, and that we've been bringing to DISCOP for the last 5 years. The Netflix team, they did the first deal at DISCOP 5 years ago. Now they are spending millions of dollars in the development of new TV series, being mostly co-produced in Nigeria and in South Africa. But it's a big change. And Showmax, Netflix, a big streaming competitor in Africa, is doing the same thing. So there is today really there are opportunities for obviously great stories that can be told to universal great stories with an African angle, and that can find great distribution inside Africa and outside of Africa.
100%. And yeah, we did see it with Netflix with the series they did.
Queen Sorrow, the first TV shows that they had with from South Africa, but now you have many shows that are presented, that have been many producers who have been developing shows with Netflix, and many shows that are now on the Netflix. Queen Sono is one of them. Blood and Water is another one, which is a very big one. Blood and Water is a team of young teenagers in Cape Town. It's doing very well, Blood and Water. So these shows are co-produced in South Africa, will be produced in Nigeria. There are a couple of big projects that have been announced, and we see also production companies from the States who, regardless of whether or not Netflix is to be involved, are looking today African themed subjects, universal themes, and to do global shows. So it's a big opportunity there.
And I did see like episode 1 of Queen Sono on Netflix, and obviously the production level was very high quality. And Netflix is smart about it, and I think a lot of companies are realizing this is a population of 1 billion people who do want to tell their own stories.
The numbers, the fundamentals. I mean, it's a 1.2 billion population, 1.1 billion or 1 billion mobile phones. So there are fundamentals that will help accelerate the marketplace. And the pandemic, as much as it is terrible, because there are major issues, but nevertheless, it has given, I believe, an opportunity for local productions to accelerate. We have at DISCOP Africa 28 projects in development presented by African producers. So we're not talking about Hollywood type of projects there. We're talking about different kind of projects, but projects that have been developed by local producers, animation, documentaries, films, TV series, and we're amazed to see the quality of these projects in terms of development efforts, number one, and also in terms of already, partnerships, the likes of Canal Plus, Star Times, the big players in Africa, whether it's in Anglophone or Francophone Africa, are now really coming in with more ammunitions and a desire to really, make something out of it.
And 2 weeks ago, we spoke about the demographics of the executives that are in this business. And you gave me a stat that was quite interesting. It skews very young compared to the traditional international distribution industry that we are maybe familiar with, like with the likes of markets like MIPCOM and MIPTV. Can you tell us more about that? And also the behavior of how people are watching content. Like you just talked about mobile, like 1.1 billion mobile phones. So yeah, tell me about the executives in the industry and how people are consuming content in Africa. I know that's two different questions, but somehow they feel linked.
They relate to each other. I think that it's. I think that the age group, the average age of the industry, is a reflection of the average of Africa's demographics, which is a very, very, very young. Africa has a very, very young population. 80% of Africans are below 30, and television is or I would say. Digital entertainment is a modern form of entertainment, which where young audiences are very important because they're the ones watching those images. So you see indeed a lot of young programmers, acquisition, commissioning, production, co-production executives representing major operators. And in fact, most of them, if not all of them, have indeed, if they hold these positions, because they do have not only a certain level of expertise, but also an eye, talent, and a very clear understanding of what they want and what's needed. So the reality of the marketplace, indeed, where even if the announcements are mostly occupied by streaming platforms and mobile operators announcing great objectives, the reality of the marketplace is that 85% of all the television viewers in Africa watch public or free-to-air television. That's what's being watched. Okay. So the number of, I believe there's about 30 million digital pay TV subscribers across sub-Saharan Africa. I think there's like 130 or 135 million television households across Africa.
And when you say that, do you mean cable households?
No. Free to air, 120, yes, and I think that the proportion of these households with access to digital services is 30%. The number of digital pay TV subscribers is 30 million. Roughly, and give or take a million, but the most important thing is really the number of television households across Africa, and 85% of these households watch free-to-air television. So these broadcasters, commercial or public broadcasters, still represent the biggest chunk of audiences. If we can talk about problems, is that it's very difficult for them to monetize their audience. There aren't any audience measurement systems that work across every country. South Africa has one, Nigeria a little bit, but very, very limited scope, and broadcasters are being shortchanged by advertisers and advertising agencies. And it's estimated that if there was a proper audience measurement system, it would reflect the fact that the airtime offered by broadcasters is at least worth twice as much if you compare it to other emerging markets. So this is, I mean, the people watch television on free-to-air channels mostly, but there is indeed a growth. MTN, for instance, the two big operators, mobile operators in Africa that are really focusing on using video content to attract or to offer added value services to their subscribers or to attract new subscribers are MTN and Orange. MTN just recently, 2 weeks ago, decided to stay focused on Africa. I think that they have about 60 million subscribers across Africa. They're very strong in Anglophone Africa. And again, it's expensive. You know, if you watch videos on telephone, it comes as a cost.
Talk about that, because that's what we've been hearing, is that people are watching content on their mobile phones there, but now you're saying it's also very expensive for them to watch. So what's that that usage looking like?
It's not common. It's really still limited. I would
Okay.
say 10% of mobile operators, and even that mobile subscribers. I would say even less than that. However, things will and should change. The cost of data prohibits more streaming platforms and prohibits more mobile viewing opportunities because of that
Okay.
cost. But mobile operators, Orange and MTN, Orange is the other big mobile operator in Africa, focusing on Francophone Africa primarily, although they are eyeing Ethiopia and South Africa as well. They are also super much involved in content. They co-produce content in Africa. So if the consumption is not there yet to justify major growth, at least the mobile operators today, the big ones, are ready to invest proper money in order to hold on to be able to provide their subscribers with the best possible content the minute they're able to afford it. So they're not waiting for the market for subscribers to have the money to do so. They are already today spending a lot of money to be big players.
Because it does sound like there's an opportunity when you're saying that basically public television remains the way that most people consume content, yet we have
free-to-air television, public and commercial free-to-air TV.
Right. But yet we're going towards we have 1.1 billion mobile phones, but the technology is not quite there yet to stream that content. But obviously, when it is, there's going to be a big boom. Okay, we have talked a lot about Africa, and I think this is good too because it really gives some context. Now let's start talking about your virtual market strategy a little bit further. And you did already start to talk about that in your intro. What did you decide to do finally, and why was that the right decision for Africa?
What we decided first was really to look at what was happening around us and how this world of virtual networking will, play out. Also look at what, broadly speaking, Africa needs and can afford present stage, not in the future, not before, right now, to end the year 2020. So first of all, we decided to forget about trying to replicate a physical market into the virtual world. We tried to see all of a sudden the benefits of engaging buyers and sellers virtually. So the very first benefit is the time. So we decided to provide a virtual market, no pressure, long form, 3 months each market, so that there's enough time to, on one end, first promote the offerings, to explain to buyers what's available, to understand what the buyers need, to maybe go back to the marketplace and find what they need. And then at the end of that market, during 4 weeks, these meetings are organized according to a very busy schedule, organized based on enough information on the side of the buyer and the side of the vendor so that that meeting becomes something very productive. So we decided to not to put any pressure, not ask our participants to wake up at 4:00 in the morning, and also change our relationship towards the industry. Up until now, even though we were involved more than, I guess, other trade shows in the organization of the meetings, and we never relied on anything automatic. Before you can organize a meeting, you got to be sure that the buyer is going to spend $2,000 to get on the plane and to book a hotel room and to get a visa. So before you get into the business of things, you have to convince a buyer to spend that kind of money. And that is not a decision that they can take overnight. So right now, our biggest advantage now is that whenever we engage in a conversation with a buyer, we right away get down to business. We talk about the content. We've put together a digital showroom. Our team of personal shoppers, our in-house networking team is now, we call them personal shoppers. Instead of trying to spend half their time trying to convince a buyer to get on the plane, we spend all of that time presenting the content. We know more about the content than we ever did in the past. If we get buyers, the relationship we've established with the buyers is a different one. The buyers, they see us as being their conduct to content, their concierge. So we help, and obviously we use the virtual meetings as a way to accelerate these connections. But what has changed is not that we've used the technology. What has changed is the time that we spend learning more about the content, having a much stronger relationship both with the vendors and the buyers, and we are more like sales assistant than trade show organizers nowadays.
Okay, and that demographically, I think that sounds like a huge opportunity to probably grow your attendance.
Yes, that absolutely. You're absolutely right. That's a very good point. Obviously, when during our in-person markets, there were still quite a few countries that were underrepresented because it cost them a fortune to fly to either Abidjan or Johannesburg. And yes, we are we're definitely going to be able to reach out at least 50% more executives than we were in the past. Plus, it is also a necessity for all of them to buy content. They will not go to markets. And we also have in our offerings, 35% of our offerings are content produced in Africa. So we have, I would say, under our roof, probably the largest contingent of content produced in Africa to offer these buyers. And that's very important to them because it's not easy to access content made in Africa. This is also important. And the last but not the least factor is that, all of these other trade shows, virtual, for them to go after buyers from Africa will be only an email away. It's they just have to, and I see everybody's like giving freebies, etc. So we need to offer our friends in Africa that we've been working with for the last 15 years, they need to understand that we're not just telling them how does a virtual market work out. We need to provide them with an additional level of service that will make DISCOP different from a virtual trade show, where you will be getting a list of companies, a list of buyers. You will be getting 25 different password usernames to be able to conduct networking during those events. We decided to take another step not to be automated, to be always available, and to understand the offerings.
I think you just convinced a whole lot of people to sign up to DISCOP Africa. I guess I've got two questions in mind here. What are your younger executives, what kind of feedback are they giving you? That's question number one. And question number two is, what is the format now looking like so for people to actually sign up?
In terms of, you mean in terms of the buyers or in terms of the vendors?
Let's say both the African buyers and the African producers, given that their demographics are younger, what kind of feedback are they giving you with this approach? And I really, because we're talking about a technical one, but we're also talking about a human relations one, where you're really focusing on acting as like their sales assistant, as you said.
The good thing, we've always been very close to the buyers, and we've always been helping them in that regard. I would say that today in sub-Saharan Africa, there are between 220 to 250 operators across 49 countries. By operators, I mean public and commercial broadcasters, subscribers-based services, streaming platforms, telcos. And most of them are broadcasters. That represents roughly 300 to 350 programmers, acquisition executives, commissioning executive, marketing executives, 350 we call key players. By key player, I mean someone with the ability to influence decision or to make a decision. So it's a very small community. We know all of these people. Most of them, if they haven't been attending our markets, they have heard of us, and they represent broadcasters or operators that are today actively seeking content. So we speak to them. We speak to them one by one, and we show them our offerings on the digital showroom. So we help them navigate through those. So they like that because of the fact that they are young, aware of some new technologies. They're not as offended as other more traditional buyers outside of Africa could be. I hear from my clients that they will, that they do, there are ways where some buyers, they don't want to deal virtually. They still need that old-fashioned approach, which is I can understand. I'm 61 years old. I can appreciate that, but there aren't any psychological obstacles to the idea of doing business virtually, and that's very important because it's going to be about efficiency, about also, when I see all these virtual sessions taking place, it's going to be about relevance. And I would say that the buyers, like anybody else, not because the things are being done virtually, that they can give as much time as they want. So we respect that time. We don't expect buyers to sit down for 5 days in a row, sitting through meetings one by one. We expect them to first understand what's being offered, to watch screeners, full-length episodes, to ask preliminary questions to our team, and then the meeting is set up. But we know that when that meeting is being set up, the vendor is going to have across the table someone who wants to do business. So, and our goal is really limited. Our goal is to organize anywhere between 15 to 25 meetings per vendor, hoping that a few of them will lead to business, because that's the status of Africa. Africa is not a place where you can, if deals are still small, as I said, it's small amount in comparison to other volumes elsewhere. But nevertheless, the cost, we're charging $1,250 for our market, comes down to $65 to $85 per meeting, plus additional privileges. So it's not a lot of money when you are, away, far away. We have bilingual, multilingual teams. Our offer is a $65 to $85 highly qualified meetings with clients, potential clients that already know your content.
What does DISCOP 2020 look like now? What is the offering, and why should people sign up, basically?
So as of this morning, we had 74 content vendors that had registered. We have now about 350 properties that are already showcased, and we believe that we will have, by the time we close our sales, around 600 to 700 properties regrouped as finished content, adaptation rights, and projects in development. During the last 4 weeks, from the 28th of September until the 23rd of October, we'll set up those 15 to 25 meetings per vendor. Obviously, if some buyers want a meeting afterwards, we'll do it. We're not, it's not going to be limited. We're not putting that kind of pressure. And most important, what we want is to really help our clients, those that have a few deals pre-identified. We want to help them close those deals. So those meetings are not sufficient. Our clients are going to need our assistance afterwards to close those deals, and we'll provide them with that assistance.
Will you also be focusing on panels and doing things online, or is it strictly focused on the B2B sales?
It is focused on B2B sales. However, we have a sidebar program called Discover, which is, and I'm not ashamed to say so, it's a highly promotional program. We've developed, there are sessions left and right, and most topics that are being covered during virtual conferences sessions have already been covered. So we don't want to get into that arena. We're going to be organizing a few virtual sales-focused sessions where we're going to be presenting companies with a very strict sales agenda. They're meant to provide interaction in the form of 6 prospects pre-identified who are super interested in what the sponsor provides for us. So that's very important. So, but nevertheless, those sessions, even if they are sales and promotional sessions, will be highly informative as well.
I love your approach, because while I spoke to other conference producers, a lot of our conversations went around technology and what we can do differently so that it goes beyond this kind of Zoom interaction or the typical online platforms that all conferences have always had, where you put up your profile and you try to get some meetings together. You are going one step further and actually offering a more human, hands-on approach where you're guiding your clients. So rather than going in one direction and overly thinking the technology components, you're going in a different element, which I think
backwards, really
backwards, but also smart and right for Africa, and actually probably a concept that should be copied as well, because maybe in these times when we're all separated, we need that help to glue us together.
Yeah, I think it's, I think that we can, those sessions, virtual sessions, can definitely be more friendlier, I think. I mean, there are ways to say, so yes, I think that this is, what we have. The human being cannot spend 8 hours a day on Zoom sessions. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So despite how much comfort, it's impossible. So it is also important to, on one hand, really take advantage of a well-prepared meeting, more disciplined, because virtual meetings are way more disciplined than a meeting at a trade show where everybody watches his watch, has a call, this and this, is looking around. So your mind is not 100% focused. It's you're late, you have another meeting, you're running around. Virtual meeting, if it's well prepared, is 10 times more productive. Doesn't mean that you don't need a personal encounter, but a virtual meeting definitely is much more productive. You have to deliver results.
Okay, let's start talking about 2021, because when we spoke 2 weeks ago, I really appreciated your honesty and your vision for what you're doing next year. And you're the only event organizer that told me, I've made the decision, or we've made the decision as an organization, to go 100% virtual even in 2021. So you already have that plan, which is great, because then it allows you to prepare for that and prepare to capture a portion of the business we've all lost in this pandemic, and then really focus on making that the best experience possible, rather than pivoting at the last minute and going, whoops, June 2021, finally, it's not working out because we still don't have a vaccine, we still don't have this, and people aren't traveling. You made that decision early on. Tell me more about that, and what's the risk in that, but why did DISCOP finally make that decision so early on?
Because first of all, from a personal reason, every morning to think, is this going to happen, and not to be in control of the situation is terrible. And speaking to a few of our clients, for them it was the same feeling. And some companies say, okay, we cannot be in control. How do we take that into? Okay, so you cannot just wake up every morning being dependent on what's happening. So virtual meetings were growing. And for us, virtual meetings, as I said earlier, allows us to reach out to more countries. So there's no reason why this kind of relationship shouldn't work. And even if there wasn't any COVID, we were always confronted to the fact that the buyers couldn't travel. When the Nigerians were in a fight with the South Africans, then it was very difficult for Nigerians to get a visa. The last minute, you're confronted with problems. And as a trade show organizer, you're always confronted with this no-show problem. You can't control people. At the last minute, they don't come, or they switch their meetings. Having 2 long-form virtual markets a year, we know will be, no matter what, highly productive for the industry, especially for trade within Africa. That's why we think it's a product that should be there all the time. Having said this, as I said, I still believe that in-person meetings are super important, but they will take a whole different format. I was on the phone this morning with our convention center in Johannesburg. They're also going through a lot of, and so this is also giving us interesting opportunity to try to reimagine what these in-person encounters will look like in the future. And I'm sure that it's not going to be, a 36 square meter or 92 square meter stand and parties. It's over. But there's something else that's going to happen. So where in-person meetings will continue to be important. And we are at this point, at this stage also reconsidering, trying to understand. We don't have all the elements in our hands because a lot of guidelines have not yet been established. But our goal is to also have the in-person meetings, in-person events, but scaled, organized completely differently than the way they were in the past.
So what does that look like in, let's say, 2022?
We hope that in 2021 we will have also physical markets. So we are considering, we will have, not in the same format, but definitely we want, we have clients who definitely want to come back to physically be in Africa. So we know that the idea of having physical markets is not dead by all means. However, it has to be thought differently. What is sure is that none of our clients, and that's another factor that's important, is also to understand where our industry stands. There was a very good article the day before yesterday in the New York Times that said it's the end of the industry as we knew it, with Warner Media cutting off, their 400 people. Today, the big distributors are moving into B2C sales. They're no longer as interested in B2B sales as they were in the past. They all have their own streaming platforms. So this has a huge impact on our industry. So our industry doesn't need to spend as much money as they used to be visible on a show floor. At least that's what I think. They will need in-person meetings in a different format, not necessarily, as I said, with a 3-story, 96 square meter stand, but the personal encounters are still going to be important. So we are now thinking about how to put such a format together, but definitely for 2021. And we spoke. I spoke this morning with South Africa, and they said that probably by the 1st of November they should be allowed to say, okay, now South Africa is open, and we can allow to organize events. And the only thing that I can tell you is that our physical events will be scaled to welcome no more than 500 people.
Which is great because, like you said before, you're looking at, you labeled it that, like your virtual online conference, you labeled it its own product. So
exactly.
Right now, what we can expect maybe from DISCOP in the future, if I'm kind of reading between the lines, is that will continue to be a way to reach out to everybody across the continent, especially those that could never manage to come in the first place. So that's the opportunity. But at the same time, recognizing that we still need to build those relationships one-on-one. So there will be more scaled down conferences in the future. I think that's a great way to kind of look at what we can expect, not only for 2021, but kind of 2022 as we crawl out of this pandemic.
And also it's going to be for physical events, wake-up call, because up until now, physical events were able to be a bit vague, about the demographic. You have a lot of people, fine, that's it. Now it's not about how many, it's not about the volume, it's who, and it's not about having shaking 1,000 hands over 3 days. It's about having 15 meetings over those 3 days. So the importance of a trade show, at least in our industry, I believe, is going to shift tremendously. We're not gonna, it's gonna have a different meaning, and because of that, Africa has a special spot because it's a special marketplace.
So if we prepare ourselves, we're going to be in a way better position in the future, post-vaccine, post-pandemic, because we're going to be maybe a lot more focused with how we approach our clients and our partners.
I agree. Absolutely. You're absolutely right.
Well, I've loved this conversation. I really like your vision on how, how DISCOP is approaching this pandemic, approaching virtual markets, and making it work for your continent, and introducing us as well, giving us a little bit of a one-on-one on the African marketplace. So Patrick, thank you very much for being with me today. It's been a real pleasure, and I look forward to speaking with you again, and also attending your market.
Okay, thank you very much, Eric. Thank you very much. And I'm looking forward. Let's speak next week, okay? Because I have a few things I wanted to talk to you about. All right, Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And that concludes today's episode of the VID Podcast. Thanks to my guest, Patrick Zuchowicki, the General Manager of DISCOP Africa. And as always, thanks to Nightwood for the background music. Their new band is actually called Cobra and Vulture, so I invite you to check them out on Spotify. Thanks a lot, and see you next time.